And so the topic I want to talk to you about today is the future of urban transportation. Over the course of 100 years, we've seen rapid transformation of our transport systems in urban mobility. We've gone from horse-drawn carriages to autonomous vehicles to potentially hyperloops in a very short period of time. This shift has occurred due to changes in land planning, changes in demographics, changes in lifestyles, increased concern over environmental issues, climate change, air quality, and major technological advancements. These shifts are changing the way people move around our cities and have major implications for the way we design our cities. So today I want to talk to you about some of these global trends and how they're going to impact the future of transportation. So just to kind of give an overview of what I'm going to be talking about. The first is talking a bit about transportation planning from the North American perspective. Then I'm going to transition towards some major trends that are impacting the future of transportation in our cities globally. I think that many of these can be applied to what's happening in Japan. And then I want to propose a new framework for how we make transportation and planning decisions in the future. And then I'm going to present two case studies of cities who are very inspiring with the way they make decisions and have been leaders in urban transportation. So hopefully you guys can learn a couple lessons from these cities. So a really quick overview of 100 years of transportation planning from a North American perspective. In the early 1900s, car ownership was very much contained to only wealthy individuals. Many North American cities had transit systems, but the difference was that it was privately owned. Government didn't play a role, and so they were owned by private companies, and transportation planning worked alongside with land development, which actually was the first example of sprawl. So then, post-World War II, we see this increased movement towards the suburbs. At the end of World War II, the suburbs became the primary place to raise families. People believed that it was safer, it was better to raise a family there. So businesses followed by relocating at the edge of cities. And at this time, many streetcar systems and public transit systems were abandoned due to decreased ridership, and companies couldn't sustain them financially. By the mid-1950s, the personal automobile becomes everyone's favorite mode of transportation. People need it for work, for travel, for their personal lives. Highways become a symbol of independence and freedom, which only leads to more demand of roads and highways. In the mid-1950s, the United States signed into action the Federal Highway Act, which led to the construction of 40,000 miles of new roads and highways. In the Canadian context, my home country, the same thing happened. In the 1950s, most public investment was in roads and highways. This had a major implication to the way our cities were designed and where population density focused. So finally, in the 1970s, we start to see a shift in investment towards public transit and public transportation systems. And this trend continues until the 2000s. So, we've seen now cities of all sizes recognizing the need for public transit investment, sustainable transportation methods. They're realizing that building more roads and highways is not sustainable and is not the answer to building out of congestion. We need a new way. So historically, this is sort of how transportation innovation has been described. It's all around the need for higher travel speeds on roads and highways, which has led to outward expansion, development on greenfield communities with lower densities, and ultimately makes it impossible to build public transit systems. So this is sort of the way North American cities have been thinking around transportation innovation in the past, which has been a really big problem. It's really been designed with one goal in mind, to increase travel speed for cars, which we know is not the model as Ryan described earlier. And so all of this has been happening in parallel with some major global trends. We're facing these incredible trends that have the potential to impact the future of transportation in profound ways. So the first trend is increasing urbanization. Today, 54% of the world's population lives in urban areas. By 2050, that's going to increase to 66%. We've also seen the growth of megacities, urban regions with populations of more than 10 million. Again, as Ryan mentioned, the largest one is Tokyo. So this is huge. This really impacts the way that cities, governments, people need to get around our cities. The second is climate change and the increasing number of extreme weather events. Flooding and violent storms are causing significant damage and displacement in cities and countries around the world. Not only that, but rising sea levels are actually threatening some of the world's biggest cities. New York, Delhi, Mumbai, Shanghai are all along coastal regions with major populations. If these sea levels rise, it will impact business, education, massive populations. So cities really need to think ahead around reducing their carbon emissions. But at the same time, there's some positive news here. We see a lot of increasing commitment from world leaders to implement action on a global scale to curb greenhouse gas emissions and the pace of global warming. Thirdly, technological advancements. There's been some really breakthrough innovations. The cost of batteries for electric vehicles has decreased significantly. Self-driving cars are on the horizon of mass adoption, and the ability to travel seamlessly between different modes of transportation just by tapping a card is becoming more common. Fourthly, we have a change in modal preferences. Younger generations in the global north are no longer seeing car ownership as a desirable method of transportation. Aging populations, a huge issue for cities to think about. As people age, they should no longer be reliable on their own to drive themselves around. So how are they able to access the city services and programs that they need to get to while still being independent? Car and ride-sharing systems are already at work in hundreds of cities, enabled by smartphones and other means, and now it's making it easier than ever to not own a car. And finally, we see this blurring line between public, private, and shared transportation. I think this is a really interesting trend that we need to watch carefully. Private sector is playing a greater role in the provision of public services. So for example, bike share systems in New York, the largest bike share system in North America, is actually, it was invested by Citibank, which is great to see. You're also seeing the role of car sharing services like Uber and Lyft playing the role of taxis and almost becoming a form of public transportation system. So these are major trends and issues that city governments need to really figure out and get ahead of. So looked at in isolation, each trend is really significant, but when you combine all these forces together, they really have the power to be truly powerful and impactful to the way people get around cities. And so cities that will become leaders in innovating their transportation systems will make decisions that go beyond how to increase travel speed. They will take into consideration reliability and safety of the system or technology. They will prioritize taking more cars off the road to introduce a low carbon alternative. They'll be affordable to citizens and reliable, especially to the citizens who are most vulnerable. It will be resilient and adaptive to extreme weather events. When these events happen, it's more necessary than ever to have reliable transportation networks. So how do we ensure that that happens? And it'll leverage data and technology to make real-time decisions and collect information. So cities that are leading the transformation of urban mobility networks and systems will demonstrate the profound effects that this has on everything from power systems to public health and public space. So the proposal I have is that in order to ensure the sustainability of our cities, we need a new model for decision making. So if we look at decision criteria, such as the ones I mentioned, it will lead to good density of cities, connected and integrated, shares, carbon neutral, low accidents on road networks, accessible and enhanced public realm, and a lot of other benefits. So I want to quickly highlight 2 cities that have been really inspiring for me. The first is Medellin. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Medellin, it is the second largest city in Colombia. It has approximately 3 million residents. And what's really important to know about Medellin is its natural geography. It is a city, very much like Kyoto actually, a city in the middle with mountains on the side, but much bigger and harder to navigate mountains. And so as the city began to grow, wealthy residents stayed close to the city center, and populations who were more vulnerable were living on the top of the mountain. And so to get to jobs, healthcare, education, they had to walk down this mountain that could take upwards of 7 hours. Yeah. So these residents were completely cut off from opportunity. And Medellin was a city with many, many socioeconomic problems. And so they needed to fix this. So city leaders knew that if they wanted to improve urban mobility and social mobility, they needed to solve this last mile problem. So just in case people aren't familiar with the last mile concept, it's a trip that commuters take to get from their home to the nearest transportation hub. So what they decided to do was in 2004, Medellin introduced the first urban gondola network. So it connected low-income residents at the top of the mountain to the transit system in the city center. So the gondola was able to transport 30,000 passengers each day in a matter of minutes. So a journey that used to take on the extreme end 7 hours now took less than 20 minutes. So it completely changed people's lives. So they were able to provide last mile connectivity, improve mobility, social inclusion, and really ultimately transform lives. If you look at the amount of crime rate decreased with these investments, healthcare quality of life improved, access to jobs, it completely revitalized these neighborhoods. So the second case study I want to present is Singapore. Singapore has been a leader for a long time in innovative transportation systems. It has a lot of conditions that allows it to be this. It's a small city-state in a very small geographic area, which allows for high density, which is, as a transportation planner, that is really what you want. The other important thing to know about Singapore is its central government plays a really heavy role in planning transportation and urban development. The government plays a coordinating role across the departments, which is really interesting. So it works with the land authority, housing, redevelopment to set a really strong regulatory and policy framework. I think what's also really important to note about Singapore is that it has a strategy. It obviously has a transportation strategy, but the number one strategy aligns with a lot what Ryan talked about, is actually to make a people-centered transportation system, which is the exact language they use. So making it easy for people to get from their hometown, their home to work, to school, or wherever they're going, as seamlessly and easy to use. And so I think that it's in itself is very important to recognize Singapore as a leader in doing this. To achieve this vision, Singapore leveraged technology to do 3 things. The first is what I just talked about, enhance the commuter experience. So it created seamless transfers between modes. So you can go from the train to the bus to bike. all by using a card. The second thing is it's become a test bed for emerging industries. Congestion pricing. From congestion pricing to autonomous vehicles, Singapore has been at the forefront of implementing cutting-edge policies and enabling industry to kind of experiment on its road network. I just want to talk about self-driving cars really quickly because Singapore is the first city in the world that will allow passengers to be picked up using autonomous vehicles. Currently, they're only in a really small area of the city, but by 2018, they believe to have the whole city with autonomous vehicles. And they estimate that it could reduce anywhere between 300,000 to 800,000 cars off the road. And finally, Singapore has become the world's first smart nation. So very similar to the dashboard presentation this morning, Singapore is collecting data at every single turning point, everything from sensors in buildings, homes, cars, to really get an understanding of what's happening at the local level at every time. And so they can make better decisions in real time around everything from health and safety to construction patterns. So what can we learn from these cities? So the first is citizen-centered design. Cities that take a citizen approach to designing and building transportation networks will accelerate the shift to becoming sustainable. If you make it easy for people to take alternative modes other than a car, they will do so. The second, again, very similar to Ryan, is build networks. Seamless, integrated networks will become the most advanced cities. They'll connect citizens easily, and again, linking very much back to the first point, it'll be easy to transfer, and policymakers will be able to leverage